So, good evening all. Welcome to the last meeting for 2024 of Royal Astronomical Society Ottawa Centre. For those who don't know know me, I know who I am. Those of you who don't know me, got it. I'm Mick Wilson and I'm sort of ringmaster, circus coordinator this evening. Special welcome to anyone from other RASC centres who might be here. Special welcome to any of our new members who might be here. And an especially warm welcome to our representative from the National Office, whom we shall meet in a moment. And if you have eggs or whatever, then just hang on to them. No. All righty, move on. Come on, click. All right, so we've been through the AGM. I'm doing the introduction at the moment. Afterwards, Bob Olson will be joining us online to record some statements about the passing of Attilla Danko. Many of you have known him for quite a long time. Soon to be ex-President Dave will be back with his Skies for December, Ottawa Skies for December. Then we have the Imperial Grand Poobah of RASC, Jenna Hinds, to be telling us on what's up and where we're going. I think that's a reasonable summary. Then we get the break, Astro Trivia. Majid, you here? Yes, good. Some of you will remember Majid from earlier in the year. He did a presentation on calculating the distance to the moon based on the timing and long data from photos. And a number of you have contributed to his effort, and so he's now coming back to give us an update on where that all ended up. We then have a number of observation reports. Richard will have our monthly talents and challenges. And Richard, I do have your observations in this month, I promise. And then we'll close out with free beer and barbecued venison in the car park. For those who are joining on Zoom, just be aware that this is being recorded for future historians to marvel over. Use the Q&A to ask questions of any speaker rather than raising your hand, and chat box comments can be seen by all, so be civil. I don't know whether this is an outstandingly good year, but it looks like one to me. 103 new members, and we've been, that's 8, 9 a month across the whole year. So congratulations to all these folk who have seen the wisdom of joining this august body. Flippin' heck. And they've done so very intelligently because of the benefits that accrue to them as members of RASC Ottawa. And this is our advertising section. Dave mentioned this earlier. I hammer it every time I'm up here. The greatest benefit of membership of the centre are the people with whom you will develop your interest in astronomy, whether that's technical, scientific, historical, whatever. We've got people who are not only knowledgeable in those areas, but are enthusiastically willing to share their expertise and exploit that as much as you can, because I think it's an invaluable resource. Yes, there are tangible assets. There was mention of the Ted Bean Loan Library during Richard's financial report. There's over 40 telescopes in there, ranging everything from little Astro scans that you can sit up on a table to large Dobsonians. They're all maintained. They're available free of charge to members to borrow for extended periods of time, months if desirable. I'm picking up a Sea Star from Oscar in the car park outside the pub tonight. That sounds really dodgy, doesn't it? So the Ted Bean Loan Library, try before you buy, try before you upgrade. That's what it's there for. At the back here, we have our media library, books, DVDs. Estelle, say hello, Estelle. She ran away, did she? Okay, so now you know where the library is. It's out the back where you'll find Estelle. Again, it's available as a perk of membership and free to all members. Fred Lossing Observatory, it's our observatory out near Almont. There are, how many now? 4 telescopes on permanent mount there. Plus you can take your own equipment to a moderately dark sky site within 45 minutes of downtown Ottawa. So that is another perk of membership. And finally, as a member, you're allowed to participate in the RASC National observing programs. These are designed to enhance your skills, your record keeping, documentation, and recognise your progress, whether it's in planetary photography, astrophotography, learning about the moon. There's a number of programs. You can check them all out on rasc.ca. The membership goodies also include our fabulous monthly newsletter, normally edited by Gordon, but he's inconveniently had a heart attack, so it'll be Doug doing it for this month, but I'm sure it will still be excellent. There is the RASC Journal, comes out bi-monthly. It's a more serious, if not academic type of tome. You get a free electronic subscription with your membership, and if for a small cost, you can then also get the physical product, some examples of which we have on the giveaway table tonight. Finally, there's the annual Observer's Handbook, a classic reference source used all over the world, believe it or not. Again, yours for the cost of membership. In addition, you get access to our club level membership use of the not Discord. When I say that, I'm saying these in the wrong order. The Astrospheric app, which is a specialised weather modelling and forecast tool, particularly targeted to the needs of amateur observers. So things like not only cloud cover, but transparency, haze, stability, and so on. 5 different models are available, plus the ensemble, which you don't get in the freebie product. That in itself is worth $66 a year. You'd be paying that to use Astrospheric with all the goodies. As a member, yours for free. And then you have access to the Discord server. This is for RASC Ottawa members only. It's not a public server, and is there to facilitate more irregular, informal communication among members. And there are a number of channels across areas like, again, astrophotography. There was a lot of chatter prior to the eclipse back in April and so on. Another benefit is access to Discord. And so all that can be yours for me, $113 a year. The Astrospheric alone accounts for 2/3 of that. What a bargain, right? Family membership, $107.50 plus per head costs for each adult and child. And then if you're under 21 or a student under 25, there's a youth membership for $72.40 a year. So I think that all seems very reasonable, and I've even paid for my membership. So now we come to members in the news. You've heard all about Gordon, so I don't need to labour that one. As referred to earlier, Malcolm Lawro's shot that made it onto APOD. Just look at that. It's stunning, absolutely stunning. And I wish, I've seen the original full res image, which this is not. And yeah, it's amazing. And same with Oscar's winning shot. To see the full res really makes you appreciate how these presentation systems don't do justice to the full data. Anyway, so Malcolm, congratulations. Jim, even you get a nod. Again, in a footnote of the current edition of the 2025 edition of the RASC Observer's Handbook. Down there on the bottom of page 67 is acknowledgement that our Jim, Mr. Filters himself, has contributed to the updating of that section of the 2025 handbook. So well done, Jim. And I had to look what look up what a peeng is, then I learned it's not a penguin. So, do we have Bob online, Chris? Okay, so please, I'll introduce Bob to say a few words about Attilla Danko. Thanks.
Hello, am I online here, Chris?
Yep, you are.
Okay, thank you. First slide, please. A little more than a week ago on Tuesday night, a giant in our astronomy hobby died when his lung cancer metastasized to his omentum. I started to get serious about astronomy about a quarter century ago, and Attilla has been a part of my hobby the entire time. Together, we attended several winter star parties in the Florida Keys, the Texas Star Party in Fort Davis, Texas, and innumerable Starfest parties in Mount Forest, Ontario. Both Attilla and I considered ourselves nighthawks and would be still up long after the rest of the crew had vanished into their tents. If it was clear, we would observe, probably with his 25-inch Dob. If it was cloudy, and it often was, we would sit in lawn chairs staring forlornly at the sky. We would spend this time talking about science, astronomy, and life. We would only be disturbed by the snoring coming from the tents. The longest uninterrupted visit I had with Attilla was when we drove together to the Winter Star Party in the Florida Keys. You have no idea how many stupid questions about optics and physics that will occur to me when you get stuck in a car with me for 25 hours. He put up with me with good humor and answered all my questions. I never asked a question about optics or physics to which he didn't know the answer. He was a true nerd. This photo is a picture of him receiving the Omega Centauri Award in 2003. This is a really big deal, as demonstrated by the other names of the winners. These include David Levy, John Dobson of the Dobsonian Telescope, Richard Barry of the first homemade CCD, and Canada's own Terry Dickinson, who is the #1 publisher of astronomy books. In 2005, he was awarded the Ken Chilton Prize by the RASC National. In 2006, he was recognized with the naming of asteroid Attilla Danko. Attilla was a modest man, so he never mentioned any of these awards. I was unaware of these honors until others told me about them. Next slide, please. Attilla is probably best known for his Clear Sky Chart computer program. This program will show you the astronomy forecast for your location. This example is of my own observatory in North Augusta. As you can see, snowstorms make for terrible viewing. You might notice from the slide, he maintained more than 6,000 of these charts. This made him renowned amongst astronomers. If I was ever somewhere astronomical and needed a favor, I would always mention that I was friends with Attilla Danko. It usually worked a charm. Next slide, please. Attilla was also the meeting chair for the Ottawa RASC. This is a photo of him narrating an astronomy fashion show at an RASC meeting. The fashion show was an excellent example of his clever wit and great sense of humor. Next slide, please. Attilla is probably best known to the public because of his monstrous 25-inch Dobsonian telescope. At every star party, he would set this scope up and get ready for the lineup of eager observers that evening. I have no idea how many people came to look through this scope, but it had to be thousands. And Attilla was fair to a fault. He even made his best friends get in line to look through this scope. In the dark, it was hard to identify people, so folks would come during the day to find Attilla and thank him for allowing them to look through his scope. This would make his day. Next slide, please. You have no idea, I have no idea who will answer my stupid questions about optics anymore. Attilla, you will be missed. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob, for those stirring words. A friend you'll long miss, I'm sure. Either Asa or Andrea, would you like to? Go on, can't even see you. There you go.
Hello. Hi. So we have an event coming up on Sunday the 14th. It's a Christmas event in Almont, and it's very close to our FLO observatory. We're participating in the event by showing the local population, the telescopes. If the weather permits, we can do observing. We're also gonna teach them about light pollution and how we can avoid it and the benefits of having our FLO in their neighborhood. So we're looking for volunteers to participate in the events. In the event, it's gonna be from noon till 6 p.m. If you have any questions, reach out to me or send an email to outreach@rasc.ca.
Sunday the 14th.
Yeah, but this picture is the wrong one, I think.
It's Saturday.
Yes. My fault, I get it wrong.
Yeah.
That's the correct date, and you don't have to be there the whole time, you need maybe 2 hours, 2 hours.
Yes. Okay.
So we've got the wrong day, but the right date on this one. Okay. Sure. Okay. So, all right. David.
Thank you very much. Okay, let's take a look at the Ottawa skies for December. First of all, the moon phases, and we did have a new moon on December the 1st. Sorry if you missed it, but our full moon is on December the 15th, and this moon is known by our Indigenous folks as the cold moon, but has also been known as the long night's moon and the moon before Yule. And we actually have 2 new moons in the month. Our second new moon is on the 31st. We have the Geminids meteor shower, which is one of the 2 big ones of the year. And it's the king of the meteor showers, producing 120 per hour at its peak. It was left behind by asteroid known as 3200 Phaethon, which was discovered in 1982. The shower runs annually from December 7th to the 17th, peaks on the night of the 13th, the morning of the 14th, and the nearly full moon will block out all but the brightest meteors this year. But if you're patient, after midnight in a dark location, you should be able to see them. We have the Perseids meteor shower as well. It's December 21st and 22nd. It's a minor meteor shower, 5 to 10 meteors per hour. The waning gibbous moon will block out many of the fainter meteors this year. But again, if you're patient after midnight in a dark location, you should be able to see these. And finally, this happens before our next meeting, and you can't see the date because my face is over top of it. But this is January 3rd. There we go. January 3rd and 4th, the Quantrids meteor shower. And this time, we're just coming out of a new moon at the end of the month. And the moon sets before midnight. So this might be an opportunity to see this. 40 meteors per hour is the rate for this one. And clicker's not working, Chris. There we go. The sun rise and set times, as you can see, as we move towards the end of the month. The shortest day of the year is obviously the 21st, that the days are starting to get a little bit longer again. Let me try to see if I can get this to work. There we go. Mercury is not visible. It's too close to the sun right now. This is the rise and set times for Mercury. Venus is visible in the early evening, and Mars is visible in the evening throughout the month. Jupiter is visible in the evening. That's at opposition tomorrow, December the 7th. And that would be the best time to view it. It's closest to the Earth. Saturn is visible in the evening sky. Uranus is visible in the evening and through the night, and Neptune is visible in the evening throughout the month. And as always been my case with these slides, I always put a little cartoon at the end. And as this is Mick's last opportunity as meeting chair, I had to make a dig at the Australians again. So sorry. Oh, one more thing. Planet visibility in 2025. This will be an astronauts. This is a bit of an eye chart, so but it gives you an idea where things are at. Finally, there's the dig to Mick. Thank you.
So even when you're ex-president, you're still going to be doing these Ottawa's monthly sky things, aren't you? All right, so this isn't over. Okay. Jenna, our special invited guest this evening is Jenna Hinds, who now runs RASC National. I'm not sure whether she's the Supreme High Chancellor, the Imperial Grand Poobah, or just the Executive Director or something like that. But she's here to bring us up to date on developments over the last year and a half at National and where we're going. So, Jenna, please, a warm welcome.
Thank you very much, Mick. And thank you all so much for inviting me to come out. I haven't been to visit too many centers yet. Not many have asked, but whenever I can, I try to combine my personal life with RASC. So I've gotten to visit Calgary and Edmonton in September, and you guys are the next one on the roster. And then we have Windsor after that. So I'm Jenna. I normally walk around, so if I look like I'm trying to leave the podium, that's why. I'm going to give you a little bit of an overview about what's happened at National. And I'm talking about this, some of you may know what the context, some of you may not, so I'm doing my best to cover as much as I can. In 2022, we had a big financial issue at National, so this is sort of surrounding that event, how we got to that point and what we're doing now to fix it. But in order to do that, I have to also tell you a little bit about myself, to tell you what my perspective on this is, and the time before all of this happened, which is when I first started at the RASC. And then we'll go through what happened while I was briefly away in 2022, and what's happened since I've come back and what we're looking forward to. So first off, I am not an astronomer by training. I have always loved nature, though. I started life with my arms in puddles. I'm big into aquatic stuff. In undergrad, I studied marine biology, so I got to do a lot of diving and research, which was great. After that, while I was there, I also got to work with wildlife quite a bit, so I've done a lot of wildlife rehabilitation work. Those are mostly just for the cute photos. And then I went off to university at University of Edinburgh, studied science communication, came back and started working at the Ontario Science Centre. And I got to be a generalist there. I got to sort of expand my horizons a little bit and learn about all kinds of science. Although as you can see, I still did favor the animals. That's Henry, the ball python. While I was there, they gave me the keys to the planetarium. And I can tell you that that is one of the best ways to learn about space, is just being given free rein in a planetarium. They handed the keys over and said, play with it, learn, find out stuff, and that sort of sparked my interest in all things astronomy. I also got to meet the RASC Toronto Centre there. You can see that the snake and I went solar observing. And after that, I found the job posting with RASC National for a youth outreach coordinator. So in 2018, I joined as the youth outreach coordinator at National Office. I was there until, I say 2022, I left January 7th, 2022, so I was there really mostly to the end of 2021. As the youth outreach coordinator, I took a break for a bunch of reasons, some personal, some professional, and then I was invited back as executive director. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about my time starting off at the RASC in 2018. Oh, first of all, there's the national office, in case you haven't been there. We occasionally host events in there. This was an event for the science communication group, which I'm impressed that you guys value science communication so much. It was neat to see. I know different folks value different things within the RASC, observing, imaging, visual or what have you. So it's really nice to see the emphasis on science communication. I think it's really important. And then in terms of who's at the national office right now, we have with me, 3 permanent staff members full-time, and then we have 1 part-time person. That's Michelle and Nawad in the photo up top. Michelle is our membership and publications coordinator. She joined us in July this year. She's really doing well. If you call the office, Michelle is the person that will be picking up the phone. Nawad joined us in September of 2023, and he is our finance and office manager. Any of the money that gets transferred for donations and membership dollars, that sort of stuff, all of our financial statements, he does all that stuff. And then Reem, who's been here since October 2020, she's lasted the longest of any of us, and she's our communications coordinator. She handles social media and our various communications out to the members, so the newsletter, the bulletin. Okay, so what do? Everyone always asks, why is our money going to this? So national office does a number of things. Our sort of main job is to manage the financial stuff for centers and the membership processing for centers. So all of the money comes through us. We sort it out and send it out to our 30 centers across Canada. Just so you know, National is based in Toronto for no real reason other than that's where we've always been. We have talked about moving, but that's a long-term plan. We also manage our membership and donor database. So membership information, donors, all that stuff comes through us. Lots of technical work. Art Fraser, if Art Fraser is here, I haven't actually seen Art's face before. No, okay. I've talked a lot about the database, so we have help from many volunteers on that. And one of the nice things about National, being that we are the larger sort of umbrella organization, is that we have the financial power to do big projects. So handling the Observer's Handbook, handling the calendar, and the journal, we are only able to do that because we have the support from so many people across Canada. And I think it brings some value to I hope it brings value to the membership. I think the publications are really important. We also do our best to support all of our volunteers. We have so many volunteers, and really, you guys are what keep us going. Those of you who volunteer both at the center level and the national level, we have lots. A lot of our time is spent working with volunteers to make stuff work. And that's part of the reason that I came back to this job. I like working with everybody. And then what do we actually, in terms of support and membership benefits, there's a list of stuff that we do up there. The certificate programs, the awards. A note for the awards, we do have national level awards, and the due date for those applications is December 31st. So if you have anyone you want to nominate at the national level, those applications are due December 31st. If you need more details, let me know. We run the General Assembly, which is a big conference every year. We send out newsletters and bulletins to the members. We run our archives as well, and that also includes the donor telescope collection. We're cautiously bringing back some programs like outreach materials. We, at a time, provided outreach materials for free. We paused that as we were dealing with this financial crisis. We're starting to bring it back now. And we, of course, manage our online store, among other things. But okay, don't worry too much about this diagram. This is a lot of words, and I don't normally like this many words. This is in our center operations manual. It just gives the overall structure of the society, and I'll just go with the top headings, essentially. The membership being our base. You are our members. The members interact with the society through the centers, through committees. We have, I think, 14 committees at the national level, and then through national office as well. And then the centers are represented at the national level by National Council. J.S. Godet and Stephen Norse was your national rep for a while. I think he's no longer. You are now. Welcome to the new national reps. National Council meets 6 times a year, and included with all the other center reps so that we can share ideas and work together. And then the national board hovers above us all and makes large-scale decisions for us, with us. Alrighty, so while I was at the RASC as the youth outreach coordinator, I did a bunch of stuff. Some of you may know me from the Insider's Guide to the Galaxy, which was a program that we jumped on during the pandemic to try to provide benefits to members when things were looking a little rough. I do want to just say at that time as well, Ottawa Centre did fantastically at getting on board with virtual meetings. You guys were the first and the most enthusiastic centre to participate in virtual meetings. So big kudos to you for jumping on that so fast, and for leading the way for other centers as well. I ran other programs too. It took a while to figure out, for me anyway, to figure out what National's role was here. Because as members and as outreach folks, for those of you who take out your telescopes and talk to people, you are having me do that as the outreach coordinator. One extra person is not going to do that much. You guys are better at it and you're doing it all the time. And there's so many volunteers who are doing it. Having one person at the office also going to schools, also going out to events is not going to make that much of a difference. So it took a while to figure out that what the most beneficial way for me to operate as the outreach coordinator was to help support the volunteers, create programming that can be used or shared with members on a more broad basis, maybe pilot test projects for centers to run. And that advised how I feel about the society now. I also did work, I'm throwing this in there because I spent so much of my time on it. I know it wasn't the most popular program, but I worked on the robotic telescope in California, and we used that to teach high school students primarily how to image exoplanet transits. It was quite a big project and it was quite successful. It was small groups of people, but it was very successful with the people that we had. We would go through the whole steps of finding a candidate exoplanet transit to image, setting it up on the telescope, getting the images, calibrating the images, and then running the science on it. And about half of the kids who went through the program ended up studying exoplanets in university or using the experience to gain access to the community later. So a couple of them ended up working for IREX, that sort of stuff. Yeah, it was a great program. Unfortunately, money is always a consideration. So we'll get to that a little bit more later. So what happened from 2018 to 2021 while I was there? These are sort of the large scale changes in the office. We brought Sky News in-house in that time. For those of you who remember Sky News was our magazine. It was, we owned it, I believe from 2015 onwards. And then in 2019, we brought it sort of closer under the RASC umbrella. So we were in charge of it we worked much more closely with it in the office, and staff were devoting more time to it in the office. We changed executive directors. Randy Atwood left in October 2019, and Phil Groff came in. I believe Phil spoke to you at some point, probably. Yeah. And then Phil came in right as we were bringing Sky News in-house, and we started to increase the staff by a lot. So I was the 4th staff member to be brought in. I was under a grant. We had a 5th staff member come on board just before Phil arrived, also on a grant. And then we started adding more and more people, some on grants, some not. Then we started to see significant staff turnover. And the biggest loss on this was Renata. I don't know if any of you remember Renata. She was our finance manager for 10 years at the national office. And she had so much institutional knowledge. Almost none of it was written down. And she retired in July 2021. So that was a big hit to us. And with that staff turnover and the loss of some of the bigger players, Renata and Adela both left. I ended up deciding to leave as well. The workload was getting really, really big. And I had some personal stuff that I was attending to outside of work. And then 2022 happened, and most of what I've learned about 2022 has been retroactive, so I will give you what I know about it. First off, Ottawa Centre wrote an open letter to National, along with the National Council, saying your finances aren't looking great, you're spending a lot of money, and you're not talking to us about it. I found the letter the other day, I had never actually seen it. It was a really well-written letter. And you were absolutely right to be writing it. All of those things were happening and the communication was not great about it. Following that, there was a bit of a lot of changes very suddenly at National Office, and that included Phil leaving. He was the former executive director. We had Sky News shut down. That was in the works, I think, from February 2023. And so when I showed up, Sky News was in the process of shutting down. We closed the robotic telescope program, and we sold the robotic telescope. A lot of the office staff left, which honestly, you know, it was actually probably a good thing for us. For those of you who have looked at this sort of thing, staff are a huge, huge portion of the budget. And so many of the office staff left, and that came with an associated reduction in programming. We dismissed the contract fundraiser. And then we spent a whole bunch of time looking at what was being spent. That was most of my 2023, was looking at where did we go wrong? What were we spending money on? How can we reduce the expenses? That addressed the immediate concern of how do we deal with the money issue, the spending issue. I was relatively pleased. When I came in, we were in a tight spot. We didn't have tons of cash left, and we managed to scrape by without liquidating too many of our assets. The only asset we had to liquidate, the only thing we had to sell, was the robotic telescope. And that carried us through and to a point where we are now much more financially stable. And I'm not sure if you guys are curious about this, the scope sold for $30,000 US, $40,000 Canadian, which was pretty good. We spent about $50,000 on it to begin with 5 years, 7 years prior, something like that. And it sold to a tech guy from California in situ. He bought it in the observatory and said, you know, he was very, very pleased to get it. And he's actually helped us out since then. Okanagan Center had a theft, and he gave one of his items to Okanagan Center to help them recover. So that actually turned, even though I'm sad to see the program go, it turned out better than we expected. And finally, probably one of the most important things is we started having way more frequent board meetings. Right at the beginning of 2023, the board was meeting twice a month, maybe 3 times a month at times. It's been dropped down to once a month now, but that's still up from where it was at before. Okay. We have a couple long-term fixes, and then we're going to go into what did we learn from all of this and how can we avoid doing it again. The long-term fixes, which have gone on for this year, we've reduced the national office scope to just minimize staffing requirements. We brought it back to the staffing levels in 2018, before I even got here as the outreach coordinator. We just have 3 people, and we're covering the basics. Part of my reasoning for that was that I knew we could cover the basics because we did it before. We're taking a lot of caution when seeking or accepting restricted donations and grants. So grants and donations that have strings attached. We ran a lot on those grants, and it can be a bit of a problem. I feel that we accepted grants that we didn't think through strategically. Whether or not it made, like, if we're accepting the money, does it make sense to accept the money? Does it make sense to run a certain program? We didn't always think through those steps. We are being very careful about that now. We also brought our accounting back in-house. After Renata left, the accounting got sent out to an external group. It was sent out to an organization called Charity Accounts. They do accounting for charities. What a surprise. They are expensive, and it's much nicer when we have people who know the organization who are looking through the budget, especially with an organization that is as complicated as the RASC. So we've brought that back in-house. We have much more attention being paid to the finances now. And then, of course, we've also been more frequent in broadly sharing the financial statements. We send those out to the National Council every time, as far as I know, every time before we have a meeting. And hopefully the reps bring it back for you guys to hear about if it's something you want to hear about. Okay, so where did we go wrong? I'm going to leave a timeline up over here. Don't worry about the first point. You don't need to move my face. Can I remember what it says? We hired a fundraiser. That's what it says. And we had a core staff of 3. Thank you. So this just sort of summarizes everything that I've just said. I came in 2018, Sky News came in-house 2019, Phil got here and we started hiring more people. 2020, we had COVID, and we started to hire more staff to deal with the extra programming. We had a whole bunch of staff departures in 2021, and key to that was that several grants that we used to hire people ended. So the funding from those grants was no longer available, and those staff stayed on board. So the money then was coming out of the baseline. Then we hit peak staffing at 15 people. In 2022, I counted, and I was full and part-time, and we moved to a bigger and more expensive office. And then finally, 2023 has been bringing it all back to earth. So we went wrong in a couple ways. We focused really heavily on grant-based fundraising, and that restricted our revenue very much so. So that by bringing in grants where we had to complete a certain project, often the amount of staff time that went into it or the amount of volunteer time, whatever the case may be, was way more than we had the time for. We massively increased the staff, and that increased the expenses accordingly. And we also had a lot of senior staff turnover, which meant that a lot of historical knowledge got lost. And what did we learn? To be strategic with gifts and grants, to have the board and the National Council continue with their oversight in a much more hands-on way. One of the agenda, not agendas, that's rude. One of the ideas that Phil was, the former executive director, was pushing was to have a more hands-off board, one that was not more governance oversight, very, very high level stuff. And that works really well if you trust the person in charge and the person in charge knows everything that they're doing. That has stepped back. I knew that would be the case coming in. I do feel like I know very well how the organization works, but I completely understand why the board is much more involved now and is going to stay involved for a while. And having National Council to catch things, more eyes on stuff has been really, really helpful for us. So having National Council there to consult and to keep us in check has been very, very valuable. And we want to make sure that the baseline costs are covered by revenue before we expand programming, and that's going to come into play when we look to the future. So going forward, there's some big changes that we have to make to the way that we run this. We have now stabilized the budget. Last year, sorry, it's this year still. 2024, we are likely going to post a loss. 2023, we have avoided posting a loss thanks to a one-time massive donation. Otherwise, we would have posted a loss. And now finally, in 2025, in case the National Council reps haven't said it yet, we have a very nearly balanced budget. Right now, we're showing a $5,000 loss on a budget with, I think, about $600,000, $700,000 in revenue. So we're darn close, and it has not been easy. We're slowly and carefully reintroducing this national level programming in a financially sustainable way. So one of the programs that got cut when I came back, just as we were scrambling to figure everything out, was those outreach materials. And we've heard from centers that they're really, really valuable, those star finders and the moon gazers, and that they really want them back. And this year we're working to bring them back. We have it in the budget. We're just not diving in head first. We're not buying $50,000 worth. We're doing it very, very carefully and measured so that we don't way outpace our expenses again. But we do really, the thing is, after a year of doing cuts and managing everything, you have no idea how badly I want to get back to the fun stuff, all the good stuff that we do and the stuff that you guys are doing on the ground. And I want to get back to supporting it and bringing this stuff forward. So I'm really, really glad that we're getting to that point now. And this is a big one. We're focusing more, at least my plan is to focus more on supporting the centers. As I said, when I was outreach coordinator, when I was learning more about the RASC, I found that National didn't maybe know what its position was, what it was supposed to be doing. We were kind of doing a bunch of stuff, but not necessarily strategically. Some of the basics, like the books and all, and the publications and all that, 100% that's stuff that we should be doing. But the like bits and pieces of outreach here and there wasn't working. I think what National should be doing with the staff that we have is supporting the centers with their programming so that you guys can do the good work. We should be providing materials, we should be providing training, and opportunities to talk to each other. That's one big thing that I think is really important. I don't want the centers to feel like they're in bubbles. I don't want you guys to feel like you're on your own. I want you to be able to talk to the other centers and get ideas from each other and work together. There's no point reinventing the wheel every time. If there's ever a question that you guys have about how it works, I'm sure another center has worked on it too. And that's one of the roles that I take. I get to know everybody. It's awesome. And so if you guys need to meet someone, I've got people that you can meet. I get to be the person who talks to all the centers. So please, 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 if you have a question or you want to start a new program, reach out to me and I will do what I can to find you a person who can help if I can't do it myself. I think it's really important. And I honestly wish that everybody had the opportunity to meet everybody across the RASC because there's so many wonderful people in each center. And it's been so much fun to meet the ones here that I've spoken to for so long on the phone. And now I get to see in person. So I I really think the value for where we are at National is just to support the centers because you guys do the job so well. There's a lot more that I could talk about in terms of the future. I'm going to leave a lot of room for questions because I know that people will want to dig into various different topics. I am quite happy to take the hard questions. Stephen Norse asks great questions at the National Council meetings. Mick, you got to follow that act. So for now, I'm going to say thank you so much for being such a model center for so many of our other folks across Canada, for doing such amazing work, for engaging great people, for hosting fantastic meetings, doing it all online, and working so hard. Thank you very much for that. Thank you for inviting me, and I appreciate you very much. Hit me, baby. Yeah.
Can we get some live?
Yeah.
Hi, Jenna. Richard Taylor here. I'm just wondering, did you ever find a new treasurer?
It's a good question. We did. His name is Stuart Heggie. He came in, so we had a long period without a treasurer. You were absolutely right, Richard. Our treasurer throughout this financial crisis did not run again in 2023. Stuart Heggie, who is on the Astro Imaging Committee, he volunteered. He's a business guy, not necessarily a finance guy. He volunteered just to essentially cover the base so that we had somebody. We even changed the bylaws to try to find someone who is interested so that we could have a treasurer who is not, I think it's not on the board, or something like that. It's just to try to find someone who wanted to do it. Is it ever hard? Marie, thank you for taking over the service center because it's hard to find a treasurer. Yeah. Yeah, come here.
So hi everyone. Yeah, I'll volunteer. I'll take over as treasurer for Richard. I know I have big shoes to fill, but he's been such a great teacher as of now. I'm sure everything will be all right. A lot of you have already reached out to offer help, to tell me that you're there if I have any question, former treasurers as well. So thank you very much, and I hope I'll do a great job as Richard did. Okay.
Thank you, Richard. Does nobody want to yell at me about Sky News?
Andrea.
This was more just a comment when, oh, hi, sorry, I'm Andrea, Jenna and I know each other.
Oh, at least you're back.
Okay. It's more, one of the issues that we, as you see, we just redid our bylaws and we had to do that under the laws of Ontario, which had changed. And we did try to ask other, you know, if you have any other centers that haven't updated their bylaws, I mean, we could help them. That's all I wanted to say.
Thank you for offering.
Because we couldn't find anybody who would help us, just so you know.
Yeah, I know. And I know this was a point. I felt pretty bad about this, and I should have probably addressed it beforehand. I believe Phil made promises that we would, like, National would financially help with the lawyer. And then I came in and said we couldn't do it just because if looking at our finances, we didn't have the money. I mean, we barely had the money to keep our staff on board. We barely had the money to pay the bills at one point. And so I do regret that we couldn't help on that. And I appreciate that you guys are willing to step forward and help other centers with it when we couldn't help you. So thank you.
Thanks, Jenna. Anyone else, please? This is your big opportunity, folks.
Okay, I'm Doug O'Brien, and just candidly, what was the big mistake? Was it Sky News? Was it the robotic telescope? I mean, both of them seem to be ways of massively spending money. Getting into the publishing business. I know the RASC is in the publishing business, but it's in a very fixed way. It's not trying to run a commercial magazine. And the robotic telescope seemed to also be a step into running a business.
Mhm.
I mean, the way it say from Royal Society to failed business.
Mm.
You know,
Yeah.
I think really what we need to do is to say, we're still a Royal Society.
Mhm.
That's a unique, rare thing.
Mhm.
What would Newton do? I mean, what did the Royal Society do originally?
Mhm.
I mean, it published papers.
Mhm.
It had talks and things. I mean, the stuff we have been doing for a century
Mhm.
is really what we should still be doing.
I agree. Yeah. I thank you for that. So I have looked through, this was personal interest because the robotic telescope meant a lot to me in terms of the outreach that we did with it, not so much the business aspect of it, just the getting it to students. With the grants that we received, this is the thing. When you're fundraising for this stuff, it's so much easier to have a project to fundraise for, and the robotic telescope looked good. And with the grants that we received, if you don't count staff time, we didn't lose money on it. We managed to cover the costs associated with it, with the grants that we had. I don't know if we would have been able to continue doing that. It doesn't matter because we sold it. Sky News did post a loss very frequently. And I think there are a number of reasons it didn't go well. I think Sky News could have, you're right, it's close to being publishing, it's close to what this is like a Royal Society should do. I think it actually bridges it quite nicely between the journal. It offers something that's not as academic as the journal, that's more interesting to get more people engaged and brought in. I don't know if it would have gone better if we just run everything from inside. We did have a third party handling subscriptions and marketing and sales, that sort of stuff. And I think we could have improved if we had brought it more in-house on that. But it's a big expense. And magazines, print media is generally not doing that well. I think there were other decisions that could have been made with it. Regardless, I wouldn't do it again. I wouldn't buy another magazine. So maybe that says something about whether or not it was the right decision. I know it was beloved. We have had so many people either cancel their membership because they don't want it without Sky News, or tell us that Sky News was their main publication that they read. Whether or not it should be a RASC item is now out of the question, sort of. I think you're right that we should get back to doing like the stuff that Royal Societies do. And we're doing our best to, that's the base that we're building off of. The journals, the handbook, the publishing high quality publications, supporting centers and giving talks, supporting outreach, all of that. And then when we move forward, it will be with caution when it comes to bringing on new projects. Does that answer your question? Ish?
Hi, Jenna.
Hi.
Thanks for coming out and talking to us. Rick Wagner.
Oh, hey, Rick.
Yes. First, a comment about Sky News is that I think it's very interesting that the American Astronomical Society just bought Sky and Telescope.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
a similar type arrangement just about the time that we were losing Sky News. This may be putting you on the spot, so we don't necessarily expect an answer, but I've heard some concerns from other members about the fact that we are now running on essentially exactly the same board that we were running on sort of 3 or 4 years ago when everything went the way it did. And some people have expressed concern about that.
Who was here 3 or 4? So Robin, or who was the president at the time? Charles?
I don't know, but,
okay.
But it's all, the board is basically all the same people.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I
think they were given quite the awakening. I think there's opportunities to change who's on the board. We will have some. Will we have people stepping down now? We might have some spots in June. Yeah, I think the tricky part is not that many people volunteer. Yeah. We haven't had that. Like, we've had to hunt down people to get them on board. We lost a board member. We had a new board member join in June of 2023. And we brought back, at the time, Randy was not on the board, although he was the executive director. So you're right on that point that he was around in the management. Michael was on the board. I can't remember who else was there. But basically, if you have people who want to be on the board, please volunteer them because they are looking for new folks and it's hard to fill these roles. We did fill the one director who left partway through the year. He had family obligations and he left in, I don't know, June, and we just found a replacement for him. That is confidential-ish. So you'll hear about it later. Yeah, so it is hard. It's hard to find the board. I understand your concern. And I would urge those of you who are interested in facilitating change and making things right on the way forward to consider running for the board.
Okay, Robert Dick.
Sorry, can I add one last thing? Sorry. Even people who renew on the board, there's 3 people who renew each year. They have to stand for election. So if you want people to take new roles on the board, they can win. If you add in people to their names to the pot, they can win over the people who are currently on the board. So if you want to change the board, vote and bring people on. We need more people. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, Robert Dick. And I remember there's a kerfuffle a few years ago when the board vetoed the application of someone to run for the board, which is rather odd, but there's good reason for it, but bad method. But the one question I had, and I've been out of the national realm for a few years, I'm wondering, is there anything left of the Ruth Northcott Fund, the Millman Fund, and the Endowment Fund? Are they substantial as they used to be?
Yeah, they're all in the finances that we put out each month. Like you can see it in the balance sheet. They are 250, 300,000 each or something like that for the legacy, maybe a little bit more now.
But they've been preserved over
Yeah,
the years.
we didn't tap into in this case, we didn't tap into it. They've tapped in, like executive have tapped into it before. So for example, I think the purchase of Sky News was funded from one of those accounts. But we have not tapped into it during this time. We didn't have to liquidate any of those assets. We didn't have to give a loan to ourselves. And I have lots of feelings about the legacy fund. I would love for the legacy fund to be massive so that we can use the interest to maintain the society. I think it's probably the wisest decision going forward in terms of how we maintain our income is to have big investments that produce income for us to run off of. And so I am very against, generally speaking, using the legacy fund for anything. I think it should be there to maintain sort of a buffer for the society. The Northcott Fund we are starting to look at it, using the income off of it, not using the principal, because that's in the policy manual. That's what we do. We should be using the money to fund educational stuff. And that's where the money for the outreach materials is coming from, unless we find donors who want to give just to that project, and then we'll use that.
Thanks, Jenna. Doug Fleming. I really feel good about you in your role. It makes me feel a lot better. And I'm sure this is part of what you're thinking about, but could you address the question of diversity within the organization?
Mm-hmm. That has
part of your priority. But
it is, yeah, that is.
Flesh that out a little bit.
Sure. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. That has taken a backseat for the more, the more urgent, we need to not let the organization fall apart. And now that we're back into it, that is, that's something that is, I think, a constant struggle in the society to engage people who are not the usual demographic. Nothing against the usual demographic. You're all wonderful. But it is a concern. We're working on it in as much in public places as we can. So this has come up with the calendar, that the calendar could use some work to show off some diversity within the society. That's something that we're looking at improving next year. In general, I think it's something I'll have to spend more time thinking about. Now that I'm done dealing with the emergency, I'll have to turn my mind to it a little bit more. In what ways would you as centers feel that we could help you with diversity in terms of do you need representation? Do you need talks about it? Is there any way that we can support in that way? No? Because we can do stuff at the national level to make sure that we hit diversity goals with the board, with volunteers and with representation that way. I did mention this, who was I think it was you. Yeah, I was talking about doing a podcast with you and highlighting members from different centers who are doing interesting things. And that would be one way to get people's faces and voices out into the world, to sort of get the representation present. But it'll be something that we have to think about in terms of projects later. Yeah. I wish we had a quick, easy answer. Yeah.
Alrighty. Again, thank you very much for your time, Jenna. I believe that's all the questions that we've got or we can afford. And please let this not be the last time. I know you've got a busy schedule and your inbox is this deep and so on, but thank you very much. And Majid, during the break, if we can have a word, please, because we are running over time. So rest of the museum, I don't know whether the other event's still running, but consider it closed. Bathrooms are out and around to the left. We will be doing door prizes tonight. And meanwhile, something to ponder. On what date? In the Gregorian calendar, of course. Don't want anything from Ethiopia or Muslim calendars here. Do the 12 days of Christmas start? It's not that I'm not inclusive, I just want to keep it simple. So on what date do the 12 days of Christmas start, traditionally? And why are there 12 days of Christmas? So that's your points to ponder. We've still got the swap tables going. You can have a look at the stuff for giveaways and door prizes, and I'll be doing the tickets. So can we give it 10 minutes, please?
It's just off Cassiopeia, and it's a supernova remnant about 10,000 years old. It's quite difficult to image, so I put quite a lot of time into it. This is narrowband with 10-minute sub-exposures. You can see on the bottom just a little hint of oxygen, and the rest is all hydrogen and sulfur. Here you can see in the wider context some little star clusters down the middle and extra emission nebulae over on the left-hand side there. Then on the other side of Cassiopeia is the Heart Nebula, a little bit more well known. Again, it's a narrowband image. This time we're picking up a lot more oxygen in addition to the sulfur and hydrogen. On the right-hand side, you've got the, oops, sorry, go back a bit. The Fishhead Nebula and a prominent star cluster in the middle. And just next door is the Sol Nebula. Again, a nice emission nebula. And when you put it all together, you have the heart and soul. And I will point out, I think about a year ago, there was a challenge object to see a couple of galaxies. These little red, I think this spot and this spot are the Mathieu galaxies, which I think Oscar challenged us to see at one point. And to see a galaxy through the dust and haze of the Milky Way is quite unusual, but they just pop out there if you know where to look. So that's it. Thank you.
All right, Jim. Okay, act surprised. So I guess it's the green. Okay, so this is an inverted solar animation sequence taken November 3rd using my Alt-Az mount. You can notice the rotation. Sorry for the uneven lighting. The seeing was not that good, and that could account for some of that uneven lighting. But nevertheless, there are certain features of the sun, especially prominence movement, that are highlighted. Solar prominences are dense clouds of plasma in the sun's corona and chromosphere. This high-density material is suspended against its own gravity by the magnetic field that supports and directs it, as well as insulating it from the surrounding hot coronal plasma. Some prominences can remain stationary for hours or days, but can also become unstable when the magnetic structure that supports them become unstable. As an example, when new magnetic field loops form beneath them and move upwards. This can cause plasma to be released. So the center, so this is the active region right here, where you would find sunspots, strong magnetic activity, and plasma release. However, these inverted images may make it difficult to show some of the details like plasma eruption. So what I've done is, this is the same animation sequence, only it's processed differently. And here you notice that the surface looks a lot more familiar, and the active regions that I previously mentioned can be seen along the central area. And you'll notice in the central area the relative brightness. Good question. 70 minutes. Yeah, you're welcome. And this is a single frame from the animation that captures the plasma eruptions pretty well. Thank you. All righty, next up we have Robert. This is a presentation that should have been made last month, but the technical gremlins got us. So thanks for your patience. The big green is forward. Okay.
Good evening. I guess we'll go to the first slide. Do I do this? I guess I do this. Yeah, there we are. I was involved with light pollution abatement in the RASC for many years. And in 2019, the RASC funded my way to a Starlight conference in New Zealand. And so, yes, it was terrible that I took the opportunity. But when I got there, it snowed. So, which was great for the Australians because they never saw snow. But it was a forecasting what we'd get following winter. So that was 2019. And then this year, I was able to set up let's see, now where am I going? Back on this. Did I use something wrong, Chris? Okay, thanks. So this time I brought down a camera in 2024 and set it up in a field next to the hotel. And this is what I do in my backyard at the cottage for the last number of years. So you just set the camera up and you record the rotation of the sky, and at last it's going in the wrong direction. And what happened to the North Star? Well, there isn't one. Well, there's not really a prominent one anyway, but it was nice to be able to see this. Now, this is a dark sky preserve, and look at all the lights, but here I'm looking up a hill into the lights. Not terribly clever, but it was the closest I could get. It was close to, at least to the hotel, and was able to last for the entire night. Now, I did a sequence looking towards the north. This is looking towards the south, but it got corrupted. Anybody know how to fix an MPEG-4 file that's corrupted? I think the power failed sometime before it finished writing the header or something. If somebody knows about that, how to fix that, let me know. I'd be great. Great. And of course, Dawn came and then we had to get up and go to the conference. Now, this year it was much different. Let's see, I guess the next slide, I guess. Here we, oops, nope, next slide. There we are. This is what the area looks like. It's a dark sky preserve. It's one of the well, it is the largest in New Zealand, and New Zealand is working towards becoming a dark sky nation. And there's a number of dark sky preserves around there, and off to the left of the frame is Mount John, which is an observatory, and a very popular and successful murder mystery book has been written and published where the director gets murdered. So it's kind of a neat place. You're saying, which one is the light? There's the light. So where I was looking, this is a hotel, the facility I was staying with, and there's a field over here, a soccer field. And I was at the bottom of the soccer field, looking up at the park facilities, and they had a few lights, but it's actually an extremely dark area with modern lights, and modern lights being also good modern lights as well. So they've discovered full cutoff lighting. They discovered the low color temperature lighting. It's they've got good people down there. The next slide is the picture that was more conducive of I suppose what you'd expect to see in New Zealand. And this is Lake Tipico on the middle of the South Island, looking north over the lake. And this time there was no snow and nice cool breeze coming off the lake, but it was a delightful trip. Now, it was the RASC paid for me in 2019. Thank you very much for your membership fees. This time I told them, sorry, the RAC is not going to pay. So they say, okay, we'll pay you. So they funded the out-of-pocket expenses, as long as I videotaped all the presentations. So that's what I'm currently doing now. And sadly, some of the files are corrupted and I'd like to resurrect them. And all I have to do is give them the 2 terabytes of video after they're edited and rendered. So if you're interested in what goes on at these conferences, the 2019 versions are up on the RAC website, National RAC website. And hopefully in the next few months, you'll see the 2024 version. So thank you very much.
Dr. Thompson.
All right, my first image tonight, the date there is wrong. It was actually the 9th. That's my fault. So we had maybe not a ton of clear nights in November, but we had a fair number of clear days. And so I was able to do a fair amount of solar. This was collected with my double stack. That's a level 3 for you playing at home. I've used an inverted view to highlight the filaments, of which there were many on this particular day. It was quite an interesting observing day. I'm not sure what was the day, Jim, that you got your video from? The 3rd, okay, so that was before this. So quite a bit of filament activity, not a lot of sunspots, but a fair amount of filament activity in November. The following Saturday, I did a time lapse inspired by what Jim has showed us. Can I press the play button here and it'll go? Let's see what happens. Yep. So this was a massive prominence. For scale, the sunspot sort of mid left is about the size of the Earth. And if you watch it, it looks almost like a tornado. The whole thing it spirals and back and forth. I'll play it one more time. Oop, maybe not. No, doesn't want to play again. That's all right. We'll move on. See it again. I'll try to hit the play button. Oh, there. Thanks, Chris. There. So there's like many different styles of prominences. You got some stuff that's looping, some stuff that's going up and down, and then you have this massive one on the right that's just a spiraling mass of plasma. So yeah, I thought that was pretty neat. What Jim doesn't really say when he presents his great animations is that it takes a tremendous amount of effort to assemble such a video. And maybe someday Jim will tell us how he does it. Oh, okay, moving on. My final image is from an electronically assisted astronomy session I had on the 16th with a bunch of my Astro buddies, connected through Zoom. Good times. I was playing again with mini refractor. At this time, a 105 millimeter focal length f5.5. It's actually a medium format camera lens I bought from Surplus Warehouse in the US that I jerry-rigged up to be able to mount a camera to it. And this is the image that it produces, so not too bad. So this is a mosaic of 3 images, each one about 15 minutes of 30-second long subs, captured from my backyard with a Malincam DS432 camera and a 2.5 nanometer hydrogen alpha camera filter, which is necessary to see anything from the middle of Ottawa. What I thought was really cool, sure I press the right button here, is all of this stuff down in here, all this dust. But that's pretty neat to be able to pick it up from the highly light polluted downtown area. Anyway, that's it. Thank you. I think that's it. Yeah. Oh, sorry. One more. I forgot about it. In my presentation last month, I alluded to my ordering a spectroheliograph, so level 4 chromosphere, and it came. And I've been playing with it, and it's been cloudy since I got it. So it is my fault. So I've been playing with it indoors, well, indoors initially. So this top image here is what I was getting, pointing the unit at just a compact fluorescent light bulb in my workshop. And so each of these bright lines is a specific emission band coming from mercury vapor in the bulb. And then the broader bands of emission are from the phosphor that's fluorescing in the tube. So I thought that was pretty cool. And then I did get last weekend, it was cloudy, but it was still bright out, bright enough to pick up the solar spectrum. So that's what we see in the bottom here. So each of these dark lines is an absorption of some element in the sun's atmosphere. The light coming from the photosphere is being absorbed very selectively by whatever the element is in the atmosphere of the sun. Very dominant is hydrogen alpha right here. This is sodium, hydrogen beta, hydrogen gamma, and then over here is calcium 2. And a lot of these lines, like down here, that's actually absorption from our own atmosphere. So this is very promising. It's getting me really excited, and I can't wait for there to be actual clear skies to try taking some images. Anyway, stay tuned. Thank you.
Good luck with that, Jim. Malcolm, what's the dispersion on that gizmo? Okay, curious. Yeah, green button.
Pointer is which?
Is the laser
Okay.
light.
Hi, everyone. I want to show a few photos that were all taken with the same telescope, but different cameras and filters. So give you an idea of kind of the range of things that you can image with a scope. So this obviously is the moon. It's kind of my favorite area of the moon, which is around Mare Imbrium, and that's a large basin that would have been created originally by an asteroid hit, a huge asteroid, probably in 200 or 300 kilometer diameter asteroid, and it's later filled in with lava. And then there are a number of features in there. Every time I look at this area, there's something new to discover. The most obvious one that you can recognize, and I think you can see it with a pair of binoculars, is Plato, the galaxy up here. And there's a few others like Cassini here, which is a thin crater. It's been filled in with lava, but there's two other Cassini A and B craters within it, and various others. If you look at this one, for example, you see a lot of rays patterning out from that. And when you see craters with rays around them, it means that the crater itself is fairly young, because over time those rays get washed away, disappear. So that's a fairly young crater that was formed there. This is the southern hemisphere, and the large crater that we see here is Tycho. And it's not as obvious on this photo, but if you look up at the moon, Tycho really dominates in the southern hemisphere, and you will see, you know, these huge rays spreading out from it. And they've done some testing and found that the Tycho itself is about 100 million years old, which is very young in the age of craters. And so that's why there are such, you know, still such prominent rays from the scatter on that one. This is, I thought was interesting because it captures both a beautiful galaxy and nearby, although unrelated, but nearby an open cluster. The galaxy is the fireworks galaxy. You can see where it gets its name. Actually, I said you can see where it gets its name. It's not quite true. The name comes from apparently the fact that there have been a number of supernovas. It's very active for supernovas. Something like 9 or 10 supernovas have been observed from this galaxy in the last 100 years. This was taken with broadband, but then I also used hydrogen alpha, and the hydrogen alpha really brings out that red, the red nebulas that exist in that, which I think give it the fireworks kind of effect. And like I said, the nearby open cluster. And finally, this is the picture that you saw earlier that was the achieved the NASA A-pod. And I was quite happy, excited to be included in that company. If you're not familiar with it, they've been publishing the astronomy photo of the day or astronomy picture of the day since '95, I think it is. And it tends to be from observatories, from some of the NASA missions, Hubble telescope, James Webb, professional and amateur astronomers, and every day kind of a different topic. This is quite a close-up of the center of the Pac-Man nebula. To take this, I imaged this for about 30 hours total. So it was imaged in 3 wavelengths, hydrogen, sulfur, and oxygen, about 10 hours of each of those over a period of 5 nights, and then combined together. And the thing I really wanted to highlight here, which I guess caught their imagination, was those objects you see in the middle are called Bach globules, and they are dense areas of gases that are collapsing to form stars. So kind of interesting star formation feature. Thank you.
Thank you, Malcolm. And while I've got the mic, just today I stumbled across something that I don't think we've ever seen brought as a presentation to any of these meetings, and that is the sodium tail on Mercury, for which, of course, narrowband filters are required to make sure that the sodium isn't washed out by other spectra. Has anyone at RASC Ottawa had a go at that one? Do I see a hand?
I've tried it as well. It's extremely difficult.
Yeah.
Just the right configuration of mercury and super clear cut, plus a sodium filter that helps.
Plus a sodium filter. So anyway, this one to put on your, I understand, which is why we haven't seen it. Now, John, you did show up. Join us. Make yourself known. Tuesday night. Big very much.
There's an observation I made on Tuesday night that the sky cleared for a couple of hours and Orion was more or less on the meridian. But this, it's a star called Omicron 2 Eridanus. Do we have a, oops, do we have a the LED pointer? Okay, right there, there's a pair, well, first of all, Orion, and then Eridanus, the river, and then a pair of stars, Omicron 1 and Omicron 2. The star I was looking at is Omicron 2, which is a triple system. I'd heard about this maybe a year or two ago, but this is the first time I attempted observing it. And there was a brief clearing on Tuesday night. It's a triple system with the main star is magnitude 4.5, but it has two dwarf stars orbiting it. And in fact, they're just about the easiest. Well, one's a white dwarf and the other is a red dwarf. Oops. And this was with my C star. It didn't come out quite as well as I had hoped. That it turned out it was overexposed because the minimum exposure in standard mode is 10 seconds. And this, it looks like maybe 2 or 3 seconds would have been better. But you can see the main star, the bright one in the middle. And then to the left, you can see it, an elongated star, which is actually the white dwarf is on the bottom. And you can see a sort of an orange reddish sort of almost like a cap to it, because being overexposed, they sort of merged together and they didn't resolve. But in fact, the two of them are 9 arc seconds apart, which is fairly easy for a small telescope. The orbital period of the pair of dwarf stars is about 250 years, and then the pair of them orbit the main bright star, which is magnitude 4.5, in about 1800 years. The white dwarf is magnitude 9.5 and the red dwarf is 11.7, I think it is. And these stars are inherently very low luminosity, so they're difficult to find. This triple system is only 16 light years away, which is practically in our backyard. And even at that, they're very dim. Just to compare to what I would have liked to have, here's somebody else's image. And all the data is up in the corner there that their magnitudes 4.5, 9.7, and 11.5. And it turns out, I had always thought that Sirius B, the companion to Sirius, was the first known white dwarf. Actually, it was discovered before the star was, but this star was the first one to be identified as a white dwarf. It was only maybe a decade or two later that they identified Sirius B as a white dwarf, because it's lost in the glare of Sirius, so it's hard to get observations of it. But these two, like I say, are, since they have that star A magnitude 4.5, Omicron 2, as a reference, they're much easier to see than pretty much any other white or red dwarf stars. So anyways, you can see the spectral type for the B, its spectral type is DA. The D stands for dwarf. So for dwarf stars, they have DA, DO, DK, etc. So anyways, it's not too hard to observe, and maybe that'll be something to be added to our challenge objects. Okay.
All right. Thank you very much, John. And I know he's here. I know he is here. You know the routine.
Thank you. So the green is played, right? So yes, Jupiter right now is almost the opposition. As Dave mentioned, the opposition is actually tomorrow, but I started imaging it a bit earlier. So this image was taken on September 15th around 2:57 a.m. while we had the RASC Star Party. Those who were at that party remember that the seeing condition was exceptional, and I used the chance to image a couple of planets. Jupiter, one of them, is actually special in that case because it was already high enough by the time when I started imaging, and I used the observatory's 18-inch Dobsonian telescope, which has really nice optics, great resolution for planetary, and this is the result. So we had another event back then, which was the transit of Io, this little thing here, and the shadow cast. So you can see probably the direction of sun is going this way. There's a bit of shadow here of the planet, and the shadow of this little moon here is here. What's special is that to get this Io, some elements of Jupiter, I use the infrared filter, which gives a bit better contrast for especially for the moons. So the other moon here is Europa, also was close in proximity, and this picture has it as well. Next one is, so because actually it was not the only night when we had this really good seeing. A few days later, I was imaging again with, oops, I think right. I was at a fellow with, again, 18-inch Star Master, while another member of RASC, Matthew Weeks, was there with his 12-inch Obsession telescope. And we had the chance to compare. I used exactly the same equipment about the same time to see what the image of Jupiter will be like. Luckily, we had the red spot in it. And as you see, there is not really much difference, just probably a little bit more details on this one. But again, this is an image which I worked on as a stacked image and derotated, while this is just one shot. So point is that 12-inch telescope and even sometimes my 8-inch Schmidt-Cass is enough to take decent pictures. It all depends on the seeing, and I'll get to that a bit later. So yes, seeing was exceptional. We enjoyed these great views of Jupiter, and I imaged the other planets that night as well. So I composed this kind of little zoo of planets with each of them, those which were seen that night. What's special about this one was that I used infrared filter as well for Uranus. So, well, it's obviously Saturn, Jupiter with the moon, probably similar to that first picture, but a bit later when there was already transit, when the transit was over, so there is no shadow. Mars was already up in the sky. As for Venus, I used the infrared filter. I didn't have my UV filter on me, so this yellowish color comes from infrared, which I combined with visual. So you can see that infrared is actually kind of closer to the equator and all the way almost to the poles. It's higher temperature or more infrared emission coming from most of the planet, except for a little bit on both poles. It's not yellowish, but rather bluish color, which means lower temperature. So it's a bit fake image because, as you know, Venus is a really, really bright object. The sulfuric acid that it consists, that the atmosphere consists of, the droplets reflect about 85% of solar light. So it's really difficult to see any details in that bright clouds. As for Uranus, the use of infrared let me get something here, which looks like maybe some atmospheric feature, but again, it's really tiny planet and it's difficult to image it. And Neptune with probably very noticeable, I believe it was Triton, the moon of Neptune over here. Again, all with the same night with great seeing. And yeah, so tomorrow, Jupiter will be at the opposition. And I was getting ready for that few weeks ahead and was checking the sky, and you know, the sky was not really cooperating recently. So I had 4 days vacations around last weekend, and I was thinking of going to some place where the sky is open and clear. And I looked up at the map, and the closest location where the certainty of clear sky was quite high was, and please don't laugh at me, was South Carolina. So I did drive there for the sake of imaging Jupiter, which was almost at the opposition. And well, I was there, the sky was clear, but the seeing was not too good. So you can see that the details, again, on Jupiter on this picture are not as prominent as those from the previous attempts made in Ottawa. However, I managed to image, again, the other planets, in this case, Venus, with visual compared to another session of imaging it with UV filter. So this UV filter is of 350 nanometer length, which allows us to see a little bit of that cloud blanket. And the density of this blue here, sorry, of this reddish orangey here is proportional to the thickness of those clouds. Why, again, the poles are more bluish. And usually the pattern of this cloud is kind of like V-shaped. So it gives us a bit more of idea what the planet looked like. If I'm not mistaken, the size of Mars and Venus a week ago was only 11.7-11.5 arcseconds. So the details, I'm glad with what I had compared again to the seeing conditions which were back then. And the rest of planets also is a combination of either visual or a little bit of infrared. What's interesting is that Saturn, the rings, turned out to be a little bit darker than usual. I don't know the reason for that. So anyone who did have a chance to image Saturn around a week ago, if they got the same result, would be interesting to compare. That's it. Thank you.
Hey, Richard, did I get it right this month? Let's find out. And the dice are rolled. Dice are rolled.
Okay, good evening. So the challenges for this last month were all in the constellation of Taurus, the bull. And there it is. Whoa. So this I took at FLO right near the end of last month. And we have it all the way from the Pleiades up here through the Hyades, the face of the bull here, and the tips of the horns with Jupiter right in between. So lovely constellation, great views of it this last month. And I pointed out that at the time of the full moon on the 15th of November, the moon would be very close to the Pleiades. That turned out to be a lot more challenging than I thought. You couldn't see it with your eye at all because the moon was so bright. And of course, this last month has been cloudy. So there were a lot of scattered clouds in the area, and it was creating this huge glow. But with a small telescope, you could actually see the Pleiades, and as long as you had it out of the field of view with the moon in as well. So taking pictures, this was just with a zoom lens at 300 millimeters, and I found that about 1/4 of a second exposure, I think at ISO 400, gave a nice view of the Pleiades, and the moon was completely overexposed. To get the moon properly exposed, I had to do a 4,000th of a second. So I've superimposed those two pictures on top of each other. So that's not what you could see, but it shows that you could actually capture both at the same time and same place. The next challenge object was M1, the Crab Nebula, close to the eastern tip of the horn of the Taurus. And the Crab Nebula doesn't usually look like much in a telescope visually. It's just a little oval fuzzy blob, but it is a target that really does benefit from the photographic stacking and enhancements, sharpening, bringing out the colors. Then you can see a lot of the detail, and it really is a fascinating object. This is the supernova remnant, which is about 1,000 or 2,000 years old. So pretty young. It has a pulsar in the center of it, but of course you're not going to see that. And then I suggested looking at Hinds Variable Nebula, which is very close to this reddish star here, T Tauri. And I tried this on a night which was very close to the full moon. I think it was the 13th of November, because I happened to be out at FLO getting some more instruction on how to use the 14-inch. This is just with my own little telescope, though. And the moon was so bright that night, it really was creating an awful lot of light pollution. So I did not capture the Hinds Variable Nebula. If you squint, maybe you could see a little bit of fuzziness around there, but nope. We need a really dark sky, no moon in the sky for a nebula like this. And then, of course, we've seen other people's pictures of Jupiter. This was my picture on the night of the FLO star party. I think it might have been Taras came into the warm room at one point and said, "Did you know that Ganymede's shadow is going to be transiting shortly?" Well, no, I didn't. I hadn't looked it up yet. But there it was, about 11 p.m. that night. So we've got Ganymede here and Ganymede's shadow on Jupiter. Very nice view of it. So those were the observing challenges for this last month. Some gold stars to some new people. I was seeing on the Discord server, Keaton Clancy had a nice wide field view of the Pleiades. I don't know the real name, but Adon Citadel got the Pleiades and some pictures of Jupiter and its moons. Andrea got a lovely, lovely picture of Jupiter with a nice round moon. And as she mentioned, it's kind of tricky to get a good picture of the moons of Jupiter without having the twinkling effect of the bad seeing. So getting a nice round moon is a challenge. And then we've seen some more tonight, of course, lots of pictures of Jupiter. So for December, your challenge is to find the constellation of Julpan. And this is for Mick in particular, because this is an Australian Aboriginal constellation, which is quite prominent in the sky right now and through December. And I've shown it in this view the right way up. South is up, right? So for Canadians, it's going to be a bit of a challenge. You're going to have to put your thickest toque on and stand on your head and look to the south. And then you'll see the three brothers in their canoe catching the forbidden fish. A lovely bright nebula. You may have heard of it by a different name. So your challenge, can you stand on your head and see Julpan, the canoe with the three brothers? Now, also in that same region, there is something we've seen from Bob Olson tonight, Barnard number 33, the Horsehead Nebula. This is almost impossible, as he said, to see visually, but it does make a nice photographic target, and it is a challenge, and I'll talk about that in just a bit more in a moment. The other challenge is one that I've set for myself for quite a long time, the Witch Head Nebula. Back down or up at the point of the canoe. Up here is a star we know as Rigel, and right beside it is quite a large but very faint white nebula, which looks very much like a profile of a witch's head. That one is a really difficult challenge. You will really have to get the dark of the moon, a long exposure, and good seeing, no clouds around at all. But I'm hoping to catch it myself this year. We'll see how many other people can get pictures of that Witch Head Nebula. And then for the solar system, as Taras has already jumped the gun on, this is a great time right now for seeing all the different planets. The Venus is visible just after sunset, getting higher in the sky now and more in the dark sky. And then Neptune is still visible over there in the west. Uranus is still pretty high. Saturn is available. Jupiter at opposition, best possible conditions. And Mars coming up shortly after Jupiter. So they're all available. Now, Dave pointed out that Mercury is not visible right now, but it will be by the end of December in the morning sky. But hey, morning happens pretty late these days. So it doesn't have to be getting up, way, way early. You can get up at, 6 o'clock in the morning and go out and have a look for Mercury at the end of the month. So how many different planets can you see or photograph? And I've asked Dave tonight, can we actually change some of those slides we see every month about the planets, the one that's going in the Sky News? And he said, sure, yeah, it's not a problem. So let's have some members' pictures of the planets instead of those old NASA ones that they went up and had to go really close to see them. Let's have some members' pictures from our own Ottawa backyards. So this is also my personal challenge. I want to take a picture of the Horsehead Nebula that's as good as one that was taken back in the 1970s. My father-in-law, Richard Tanner, used to be a professional astronomer, and one of his colleagues, Jacques Lebrec, was also a professional, and he was taking pictures with, professional quality telescopes in the 1970s. When Dick died, he passed on his photographs to me, and this one has been standing on my wall for the last 20 years now, challenging me to get as good a picture of the Horsehead Nebula as this one that was taken on film, a single exposure. I haven't done it yet, but maybe this year I'll do it. Jacques Lebrec was also a member of the RASC Ottawa Centre. He died about 10 years ago in November 2014. So you may join me in my challenges here and see what you can do this month. The extra challenge? Sorry, disappointment. Never did happen. Hasn't blown up yet, and now it's disappearing behind the sun. So maybe it'll be happening while we're not looking, or maybe next spring. We just don't know, but I'm going to take that off the list. Yeah.
It's actually now higher in the morning sky than it is in the evening sky.
Oh, okay. So if you're getting up for Mercury, take another look at this one too then. Okay, thank you. Well, you can keep on challenging yourself, but I'm bored with this one. It's been disappointing. Okay, so those are your challenges for December. Good luck.
So we might not have heard the end of T-Claw boring. Okay, moving along. Stell, you here now? Still hiding out the back. Okay, is this or the next year's Night Sky Almanac always popular? get it while it's hot. Tentative program for January 2025. I really have no idea because this is my last session. This is my swan song, and everything now falls on the broad shoulders and into the capable hands of Paul Cloninger. So I've got many unknowns about next month's agenda. Couldn't even tell you what date it is. Fred Lossing Observatory, last members' star party will be the 28th of December. Waning crescent moon, so could be reasonable. Thanks to the usual list of suspects, the doers who keep things moving on behalf of us, the volunteers that make stuff happen. So that's Rick, Estelle, Peter Schutt, who rarely comes to these meetings. We're still looking for a refreshments coordinator, as Dave said, and Art Fraser for managing membership info, as Jenna mentioned. Okay, so we had 90 all up. Jenna, take note of how useful Zoom is, even in these post-COVID-y times, and it would really behoove National to not even think about cutting some dollars and saving a bit by closing that one down. So thank you to all our speakers. They're in the list. I won't read them all. Margid, next month for you. Special thanks to our hosts, RASC National Office for the Zoom facilities, and the CASM members who so graciously let us go so long over time. Chris up there in the booth, the voice from heaven. All critiques, comments, criticisms and so on to meetingchair@ottawa.rasc.ca, and I suggest you pour them in now because Paul's going to be dealing with them. So after this, I desperately need a beer if they're still open. Lem Maguire's on St. Laurent Boulevard. Good food, good conversation, good drinks. And so next meeting is Friday, January 17th. Boy, I was off, wasn't I there? And hopefully you all have a great Christmas. Happy 12 days of Christmas with all new partridges and pear trees and stuff. And we'll see you in the new year. So again, thanks and happy holidays.